Tonight on Travel Watch, Monte Palma, the Caribbean hotspot where prosperity and poverty sit side by side. For visitors checking in at Costa de los Leones, the view is postcard perfect. Glittering pools, golden beaches, and towers rising along the shoreline. But turn inland, and another picture dominates the hillside, the neighborhood known as Barrio Alto León. It isn't hidden. From the resort balconies, you can see it clearly. Rows of concrete houses climbing the slope, stacked tightly one above the other. The walls are faded, paint peeling under the sun, and the streets wind in narrow switchbacks. This is where many of Monte Palma's service workers live. The people cooking in the hotel kitchens, tending the bars, and cleaning the rooms. For curious travelers, Alto León is only a short walk from El Leoncito, the tourist strip at the resort's edge. By day, the main streets are active with corner shops and food stalls. But the mood changes quickly as you step deeper in. The buildings feel crowded, infrastructure is worn, and after dark, locals often warn visitors to steer clear. Monte Palma's boom has drawn the world's attention and dollars. But Alto León remains a visible reminder of what the resort's success has left behind. Luxury and hardship side by side, each shaping the city's story in plain view.
Hello, and welcome back to Monte Palma. We're just going to do a quick overview here of what's been built so far, and as you can see, it's so far not very much as this end of this island has been actually built. And there was some talk in the last episode about upgrading some roads. I'm not sure how much I actually want to upgrade. The area I'm circling here, that's the problem area. This is where most of the traffic wants to come through. I do have this highway along the backside here, but it's the long way, so traffic doesn't want to go through there. I think the thing to keep in mind here is Port Leones is not going to grow in size anymore. That's pretty much its maximum size, so it's a pretty tiny town. So I don't know if it really needs huge road infrastructure, and I'm pretty sure in the Ports and Bridges DLC there's going to be some ferry service, which might alleviate some of my traffic issues here. We're just going to draw in a connector road here, and we're going to carve out a little channel here for it between the hillsides. Now, as I was thinking about how I wanted to build the road network here, keeping in mind that Monte Palma has a somewhat corrupt history to it, it's very likely, like I said this in the last episode, I'm a little uncertain exactly how much money was available for road infrastructure. As you think about corrupt governments, the overturn in government tend to be pretty extreme. People come and go quite often in corrupt governments. So any infrastructure projects that would have been started there would have been money for some sort of overpass, say, and then the next person in power decides they don't want to build it, or they chop the budget or something. So I want the road infrastructure to be a little haphazard, or we're not talking about the height of city planning here. But we also have to keep in mind that we need it to be somewhat functional for the game. So it needs to look haphazard, but still be functional enough to actually move some traffic. So that's our kind of a challenge here. And because the cities here are not particularly large, I don't think we need like super amounts of road infrastructure. I think we can get away with it if we need it in the future. If we start seeing like huge backlogs and stuff of cars, I think we can come back in here and maybe try something. But what I'm building right now around this hillside, this is going to have to stay as is because of what we're going to be building here. I'm definitely not coming back and deleting this. It was a lot of work in here. So this has to stay the way it is. And if it's slightly dysfunctional, that's just the way the roads are going to be here. Everything connects, like all the roads connect. It's just a little, in kind of a roundabout way. Like you have to take a bit of a roundabout route to get to them, but you can get there. So it all works. From a North American eye, I suppose it looks a bit haphazard. I'm also going to be spending a little bit of time here drawing in a road network for the town that will be on the opposite shoreline. I'm not going to get too crazy here. This isn't the focus of this episode, and these roads may change. They probably will change. They're just here to give me an idea of where things are going to go. And this town is, like I said, it's going to be the original town. And its economy is going to be a little different from the resort community, but we'll get into that over the next few episodes. What I'm working on here, this hillside, this is going to be our point of interest for this episode. It's going to be pretty much the main focus of what I'm going to be building. This is going to be pretty time consuming. First thing off is I need some roads, but the game roads are too large. They just are way too big for what I want to be building here. So I'm going to be using a pedestrian path with the constant slope setting on. This allows it to basically to smooth out the trail or the path, and then allows me to, over top of that, put a net lane for very small dirt roads and paths. What I'm going to be building here is essentially a slum area, and it doesn't have proper road networks. This is not a planned area. It's essentially evolves over time on its own. Very poor infrastructure. The roads, you can drive, you probably could get a car in here, but it's very narrow. They're not paved, and it's really a chaotic mess. That's essentially what I'm trying to build here. The paths also work as a nice way to allow pedestrians to walk through here if they want to. Unfortunately, at the moment, there's no reason for them to want to walk through here. I did try inserting some of the modular parks in here to see if people would come. So far, nothing really seems to be going on up here. There won't be any people living here for a while. I want to build a retaining wall along the roadside here. The actual retaining wall in game is kind of limited how much you can work with it, right? So we're going to be using these modular cubes to build it. And we can come through here with some of Real Vision's decals to give it a bit of texture so it doesn't look so plain and ordinary. What I'm trying to, for the look I'm trying to achieve for this area is it really needs to look thrown together and unplanned. And the way the game works, the game just doesn't work that way. So in order to get this look, we're going to have to hand place quite a few static assets to build up the neighborhood. I'm just doing some tests here. These are a new decal pack. They're right here. These are great. They're large scale, like distressed surfaces, decayed surfaces, and we're going to be using these pretty extensively to just sell the idea that this is like a rundown neighborhood. And there's quite a selection of them, and they're great. We definitely need more of this sort of stuff in game to just customize stuff. This took quite a long time to build, and once again, I've said this in other episodes, I'm still getting a little used to the slower pace of this build. I'm not going to build out a huge area. By the time I'm finished here, it's only going to be a few square blocks, but I need to do this in order to build it the way I think it needs to look. For a haphazard slum area, everything is going to be built on top of each other and really tightly packed. I like the vanilla assets like the yards and stuff are totally unsuitable for this area. Nobody's going to have a backyard. I have to come up with some ways of doing it. For most of it, for a lot of the residential buildings for this build, I'm relying heavily on the European waterfront assets because they are essentially the closest building type I have to a style of building that seems suitable. So these are going to be our main building blocks. It's just going to be this long process of plopping them down, adjusting them, and then trying to stack them in ways that make visual sense. And unfortunately, I forgot to hit record and it's all done. I hate it when I do that. Anyway, so this gives you a good idea of what I've been working on here. This was probably 2 hours of work to get this done. And I'm going to continue building it here so we can see more of what I've been doing. At the very top here, we're going to go put in a little makeshift park area. Now, there's a few of these European waterfront assets that are going to be using much more than others. There's the very small 2x2 ones. There's a few different styles in there, with a few like stacking them and moving them around and taking some time to position them. We can build a lot of different looking buildings with these. They all have a similar overall style, but we can add a pretty good chaotic element to them. And I'm also spending a lot of time with just the terrain tools here, using the small setting possible just to adjust some of the terrain so things don't look too wonky. Given what we have to work with, it's impossible to make this 100% perfect. If I wanted to try to make it 100% perfect, I would be here forever. It already took a very long time to build as is, so we got to just accept some of the imperfections and work with it, do what we can with them. I'm also going to be using other building assets from these are from the Southwest pack. Just add a bit of visual interest so it's just not all the same type of architecture. And you don't need very much of it. Just a little bit of it here and there really adds to everything. And where I can't find a building that will fit, I'll just use one of these cubes here to fill in some of the awkward gaps, and we can come back and cover them up with surfaces so they blend in a little bit better. The easiest way I found to work with this is just to, on a area of the map I wasn't really building on close by, is just to lay out all of the buildings and just use the picker tool to pick them as I needed them, rather than hunting through a whole bunch of menus looking for all these things. I wasn't using a huge palette of buildings here, so it was pretty easy to do. You might see some buildings floating in odd locations. That's what that's all about. And recolor everything so, you know, it makes sense for what we're building. Now, unfortunately, because this area doesn't have any real road access, I can't make it truly functional. We can't put residential buildings here, but I can give it a bit of functionality. Like on the areas that do have actual road access, I can use the service blocks to put in, say, medium density residential into some of these locations. What that will end up doing is it will give the area a population that seems appropriate, even though most of it's going to be, unfortunately, empty. One of my biggest pet peeves is the way the buildings don't conform to terrain. One advantage of building like this is I can actually get buildings to actually conform to the terrain the way I want. And for the most part, it works out fairly well. Like I said, it's not perfect. I can't make it perfect, but if we don't look too closely at most of it from a bit of a distance, it looks totally passable. This also brings up a possibility for the developers. It's my understanding for custom assets is they are probably a long way off from my understanding of what's going on. We're not getting them anytime soon, as far as the way I understand the situation. But if they would just release like an asset pack of components, not real true standalone buildings, just architectural bits and pieces that we could add to things, then we could do a lot of our own customization. That would be a really easy to do workaround for the time being until we get something a little more like actual true custom assets. But I do enjoy the challenge of trying to make something look a little more custom out of what we have, because we don't have very much yet. Right here, we're using some of the Southwest row homes, and I'm just stacking them to make them look more makeshift apartment buildings. Also, we can do this like on steep hillsides. I could do this thing where the front of the end of the asset, we could turn them around and face one to the lower road and then flip it around, face the other part to the upper road. That works on some of this really steep terrain, and I prefer it much more than trying to work with the vanilla assets that just like really deform the terrain in ways that makes this sort of build completely impossible to do. This was also pretty time consuming in here, just going in and filling in some of the surfaces and making these places not exactly unique looking, but just connecting them to the roads and all that sort of stuff. It's not that I don't really mind doing it. It's a very relaxing activity to do. It's just, it's impossible to turn this into, for the amount of work that needs to be done here, it's impossible really to turn that into an interesting video that people will actually want to watch for. Because this kind of detailing here probably also took a couple hours on its own, probably a bit longer than that, but also necessary. I can't leave all this grass in here. We have to do the detailing in here to make it look right. And here's some more of these. I decided from the Real Vision decals is they bleed onto everything. These ones here don't really have that sort of issue, so I'm going to use a mixture of both, but they're perfect. We just break up these kind of generic cubes with some surfaces, and yeah, I think these look good. And these decals on the walls is exactly what I need to make this area look a little more run down. Less than perfect is really what I'm looking for here. Because this sort of building takes a lot more time than just zoning buildings, what I've decided to do is some of the building is probably going to be taking place off camera from this time forward. The simple reason for that is to just speed things up a little bit. I can't do it all on camera because first it will get really monotonous and boring, but also it would just take forever to do. I have to fill in quite a few neighborhoods with this sort of building style. And I think a lot of it I will be doing off camera. Probably what I'll do at the beginning of the episodes is just do a quick overview. If I had built out anything off camera, just point out what's been done. You see me do it a few times. You don't need to see me do it every time. And of course, anything unique or new will be featured in a video. I'm also going to be using some of these new decals here on the roofs. There's a nice selection of rusty surfaces and just some really larger distressed surfaces. They really break up the monotony here. And of course, recoloring also helps a lot. Since most of the time you're just going to be seeing this from like the flyovers and stuff are going to be from overhead, just breaking up the roof textures, it goes quite a long way in adding a bit of variety to the whole thing. I'm just going to create a few of these sections. We're just going to turn them into walled-in courtyards. Okay, so that's it for our slum up on the hillside. The other thing I need to do is we have a bit more of a connecting area in between here that I need to fill in just to connect that to the rest of the city. Right along the main roads here, we're going to make it a light industry area. Not a pleasant place to be. We're also going to be adding a little bit of commercial. now that I've been playing around with the static assets and starting to mix and match them, I've been finding it's just really addictive because I can now make things look a little more custom than the vanilla game. I'm finding the Japanese assets really blend in very well for this location. A lot of their buildings have a fairly generic look about them. It's not a generic North American look. I think for a Central American city, they work quite well, especially once we start recoloring them a little bit, give them more tropical colors. I have this little awkward bit of land in here, and I thought using Panama City for a fair amount of references for some of the builds here. And one thing I've noticed with Panama City is looks like storage containers, probably I'm guessing oil. They seem to be all over the place, just scattered about right up against residential in all sorts of odd locations. So I thought I'd try that here. Now I do realize I have the road entrance to this location on the on-ramp to the highway, which makes no sense. So I'm going to have to come back in here and fix that. I'm imagining these apartment blocks in here are probably going to be some sort of low-income housing. It's not a particularly desirable neighborhood to be living in around here. And these sloped Japanese buildings are perfect for the hillside here. extra detailing here on these oil drums. A bit of rust, a little bit of graffiti, just to give it a little more detail. And I'm going to be adding a few more advertisements to around the area. Still working on custom advertisements. I have started. It's a bit of a slow process to figure out things that actually are going to look good in game, but it is work in progress right now. Also going to be adding a radio mast over here on the other side of the highway. I'm not going to get into detailing this area out too much. Like I said, that's upcoming episodes, but I just want here for the skyline. And that's going to be the end of this episode. I could show you at least 2 more hours of this detailing work, but it gets monotonous and I need to cut off the video at some point. Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the video. It really does help with the view numbers of people watch to the very end. So thank you. I will see everybody in the next episode. Bye.